There are 40 factors about all sorts of things that the admissions office is looking at, and you haven't demonstrated or shown one situation in which all they look at is race and take from that stereotypes and other things. They're looking at the full person with all of these characteristics.
Yes.
Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson during the first of back-to-back challenges to affirmative action in college admissions. Based on what we heard today, the Conservative majority on the court, you'll be shocked to hear, is leaning towards ending the policy. MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman is here. He's a civil rights attorney and the host of the Charles Coleman podcast. Charles, thanks so much for joining me tonight. What did you take away from oral arguments today in court?
Well, Mehdi, the thing about what you said before the break and just now in terms of being shocking, I was hoping that you were being painfully ironic, and that's exactly what it is, complete sarcasm. Anyone who's been paying attention has to know and understand that the Supreme Court has been putting affirmative action further and further on life support for as long as we can remember. And with this conservative majority currently sitting on the course, it does seem as though it is on its last leg. I was particularly struck by some of the conservative justices' level of feigned obtuseness around what it means to include diversity as a factor when considering college application for admissions. I think that particularly for Justice Thomas, someone who has a history as a commissioner with the EEOC, to act as though he did not understand the concept of diversity was just laughable, if not altogether offensive. Also, I heard some questions from Amy Coney Barrett, which I thought were particularly disturbing. And the line of reasoning, again, just attempted to demonstrate a complete unfamiliarity with diversity and inclusion and its worth and value in spaces like college campuses. And so that was particularly alarming. But when you think about where this court is, where it's going, and how it's shown itself, it's not surprising, unfortunately, because this is setting the stage for the elimination of affirmative action and diversity in admissions.
So on that note, where do these cases go from here, and what are the possible outcomes?
Well, I think what we're going to be seeing is we're going to see a very carefully crafted line where race-based admissions or admissions that consider race as a factor are either limited or altogether done away with. And I think that that is going to have a very significant effect on the numbers of minority applicants and people from underrepresented communities who are already not in college at the rates that rival their counterparts from majority culture and majority communities. And I think Justice Sotomayor made a great point where she talked about being concerned about a precipitous decline in the number of different races that are represented on college campuses. And I think that's where we're headed. I think there will be some college campuses and some college admissions offices who do try to do the right thing and figure out what is our way around this. How can we figure out how to make sure that this environment is as diverse as we would like, and the tapestry that is a college campus is as rich and as diverse as it should be. But I think that there are going to be a lot of college offices who don't even bother.
You mentioned the word diverse, and you mentioned Clarence Thomas earlier. Let's have a listen to what Justice Clarence Thomas said today.
Mr. Park, I've heard the word diversity quite a few times, and I don't have a clue what it means. It seems to mean everything for everyone.
So Clarence Thomas has gone from not saying anything during cases to saying absolute nonsense. The idea that Clarence Thomas, whatever you think about Clarence Thomas, he's a smart guy. He's been on the bench for decades. He doesn't know what diversity means. We're supposed to buy that?
Again, this is someone who at one point was a commissioner at the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This is someone who completely understands what it is diversity. Not to mention, as you said, we're not talking about someone who is a dumb person. He clearly knows and understands what diversity is. And furthermore, within the context of this case, it is a conversation about racial considerations as it relates to admissions. So the idea that he doesn't know in this context what diversity is referring to or what it means specifically as it relates to this case is just laughable. It's almost offensive if you consider the fact that these are attorneys that have briefed this case, that have explained the manner in which this is being discussed and the reason that it's being discussed. For him to now act as though he has no idea what they're talking about with respect to diversity, it's just complete hogwash.
Last quick question, Charles. The newest justice, Justice Jackson, has recused herself from the second set of oral arguments because of her previous position on the Harvard Board of Overseers. She doesn't want a conflict of interest. And yet the longest-serving justice, Justice Clarence Thomas, refuses to recuse from any Trump election cases, despite his wife's involvement in trying to overturn the election. It is a glaring double standard, is it not?
Of course it is. And I think that it is hypocrisy 101. If you look at the court, how it's structured and the rules that govern when and how a justice must recuse himself, I applaud Justice Brown Jackson for making that decision. Ultimately, because of the way that the conservative majority is set up, it is unlikely that her presence on the court deciding to recuse herself will ultimately make a difference in terms of the final vote. But she did do the right thing in spirit, and I applaud her for following her convictions in this matter. It is unfortunate that Justice Thomas has not saw fit to follow her lead in the same regard as it relates to cases where there clearly may be a conflict of interest on his behalf.
A question I often ask about our modern political scene: how do you shame the shameless? Charles Coleman, thank you for your analysis. Much appreciated.